Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. We are so fortunate to be joined by Annie Kaempfer, the director of The Falconer. Truly a wonderful, inspiring movie, and I'm so grateful to you for making the movie and for joining us in conversation today. Uh, Welcome, Annie.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. Your screening was the first in-person screening that we've had, so I'm really excited about it.
Uh, that is thrilling. It's got to be different doing these screenings virtually, and I know you've done some because you've won awards at Destiny City and at the Bend Film Festival, and clearly people love it. Is the experience different for you in this virtual world?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's no replacing getting people together in one space and you know having everyone watch something in a communal atmosphere. I've been really happy. We've had fantastic virtual screenings. The festivals you mentioned in Mill Valley, the Environmental Film Festival in the nation's capital. We were the most watched film, which was exciting. And so we've had a great response, but you do miss that feeling of community with the audience.
I assume that in person you must have done a screening for Rodney and others, haven't you? And can you talk about Rodney's reaction to the film?
Yes, I screened in person for Rodney and one of his sisters, a small group. And yeah, I mean, I filmed him for so many years. And so he saw, he sort of saw cuts along the way. But he was happy. He is excited. He thinks that, he's hopeful the film might encourage more Black falconers and young people to learn about falconry and potentially want to become falconers. So yeah, he's pretty excited about that.
That's great. And clearly you did spend a lot of time with him. And this is one of the rare documentaries where I was sorry that it ended because there's so much more that I wanted to know. How did you make some of those decisions story-wise in terms of what you shared on screen?
Well, I guess I started out thinking that the film would be a short film and that it would really focus on Rodney's work. When I met him, he was working with the nonprofit, the Earth Conservation Corps, and they had the lease on the land out there at Oak Hill, where he was working on the bird sanctuary. And like so often happens with nonprofits, they were expecting $1 million check any day, and the check just never came. So, everything sort of changed. They had the big plans. Everything was going to be built in a 6-month period. And I thought that would be the film. And I ended up just, I guess, realizing that success in this case, and so often, isn't about necessarily the final product. It's about the process and Rodney's ability to really build a community of family, friends, volunteers, all the people who donated their time to help him still achieve his goal, or working towards achieving his goal, building this bird sanctuary, when the nonprofit that he was working with didn't end up being able to support it financially. He still worked toward that. And so I think that became what I was interested in, showing that coming together and how one individual or one small group can really do something that matters. And I just thought that, showing different sides of Rodney too, because he has received so much media attention over the years, especially in the DC area. He's relatively well known. He's been on 60 Minutes and, all kinds of short things made about him. So I just thought, showing his poetry, showing his family, there's more to somebody, just than their work. So I was happy to show that as well.
And showing his penmanship, which is also pretty awesome.
Yes, exactly. Beautiful handwriting.
Beautiful handwriting. There seem like there's some parallels between Rodney's ambitions and just the act of independent filmmaking in terms of, we hope the money's going to come from somewhere and it doesn't always materialize, but you keep moving forward with a vision. in this process of you going from seeing it as a short to a feature, did you have some struggles along the way, or did you just keep building it as your heart told you to?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I definitely asked everybody I have ever met for money, as I think all documentary filmmakers do. I received a little bit of early funding, which was great, um, from Spike Lee as a fellowship, and he was a professor of mine at the time at NYU. But really, I was just lucky enough that I was able to do the production phase pretty much at no cost, because I um, had some camera equipment and I could just borrow other equipment when I needed multiple cameras. And I had enough friends who were also working in independent film in New York that, they would help me on a shoot. In exchange, I could help them on a shoot. So I didn't really have production costs. The same way a lot of films do. My family, I'm from the DC area and my family still lives there. So I had a place to stay when I was shooting too, which was key. But yeah, the post-production phase was quite expensive. I think it's just so hard. I think, nobody's really in documentary film for the money. I don't think we'll ever make the money back. We're lucky enough to have, the film's gonna be on America Reframed on the World Channel, which is really exciting. But with that and with other sales, it's still not going to cover the cost of making the film.
Well, I applaud your passion and your commitment to telling the story, certainly. I'm curious because when you see the raptors in this film, you really do start to understand that there is a biological connection between birds and dinosaurs. And ornithophobia is one of the top 20 fears of Americans. Fear of birds is one of the top 20 fears of Americans.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And I was curious, you spent a lot of time around them. Did you find any of those birds of prey intimidating, or are they as lovely as they seem?
That's an interesting question. I guess for me, there was a sort of a distance because I was behind the camera lens almost all the time, so that there's just something different about actually watching something versus watching through a camera, and you're sort of distracted by the aesthetics of framing the shot and focusing and all of that. I didn't have any fear of birds, but I do know that during the editing process, I worked with a couple of different editors along the way, and all of them just really had an aversion to the shots of like a mouse's head being bitten off or something by the bird, things like that. And it just didn't bother me at all because I think I had that distance when I was there filming it. But yeah, I think there is something when you hold a bird and, I remember the first time I held a bird on my arm and they're really heavy. They're heavier than they look like they might be. And so, you want your arm to be far away so they're not right next to your face. And it's sort of, I get that kind of, it's like they have these big eyes and sharp beak and, you want a little distance. But I hadn't thought about the dinosaur connection. That's very interesting.
So you did put on the glove and you did hold the birds. You did have some of that experience. Did you do the thing with holding a mouse and let them go to town?
I never did that, no. I just, hold the bird and sort of get a picture and that kind of thing. It's always, whether it's that or Rodney wanting me to get on his horse or whatever things, you want to participate, but you also want to stay ready to capture any moment. So if you're ensconced with what's going on, you can't be capturing it.
I think something that I love that you capture in the film is, Rodney's clear love, not just for the birds, but seemingly all animals. He seems to have a huge heart, and not just a huge heart, but such respect for the animals, whether the birds, his horse, the dogs, who clearly love him. And yet there seems to be some distance that he maintains with people. do you want to speculate on that? I have my ideas, but it's interesting how much he likes being alone.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little bluster there. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I think Rodney will say, like, I hate people, I love animals. He doesn't hate people. If he hated people, he wouldn't devote so much of his time and emotional energy to teaching, especially young people, raptor education and spending time with them. And he, you know, he'll say, like, I only have time to let a couple people take pictures or something like that. Like only a couple people can put the bird on their arm, and then he lets everybody do it. You know, he can't resist. So there's a little bit of that's all talk there, but you know, at the same time, I think it's just Rodney has very certain ideas about how people should behave and what's what, and not everybody always lives up to that. And with the animals, it's just easier. I think animals are what they are. It's how they act. It's their nature, and they can't disappoint you. They just are what they are, really. And I think there's an ease and a comfort to that. That especially when, you know, maybe for Rodney, who's had so much loss, that human relationships can take on an extra weight.
Yeah, you mentioned the loss, and that seems so important. Is, you know, at one point in the film, Rodney talks about how tragedy strikes everybody at some point, and it's how you deal with it. And we get hints of his past. We understand some of his running on the street, and then his work with the Conservation Corps, and then what happened to so many people that he worked with in that volunteer group is just, you know, heartbreaking, if sadly not uncommon. I'm curious if there is more to this, to his backstory that you didn't share, or is he sort of private about it? What can you tell us about Rodney before we meet him as the Falconer?
I guess, you know, Rodney had those early losses with the Earth Conservation Corps really hit him and have stayed with him. And especially Monique's death. And I think there's just, you know, it was interesting. There's a scene when in the film when Rodney's mom calls him and tells him that a family member died.
Yes.
And it struck me because it was a family member who Rodney himself wasn't particularly close to, but he was really upset by it. Just hearing about someone's death, really, really affected by it. And I think that, you know, when you've had a lot of loss of people who are really close to you, then anytime you hear of something, it just brings it right back. And I think that, you know, there's the issue of violence and sort of out of nowhere street violence that sort of seems by chance. And then there's also like a lot of health issues. Rodney's had family members with a lot of health issues who died too young. And I think it just all adds up.
There's a moment that you captured when he's recalling Monique's tragic death, and I find it fascinating that he remembers and recounts the paces in the apartment, and I found that such a fascinating bit of recall. Do you have any insight into how that is so etched in his memory? Clearly, you know, Monique's murder would be, but just his, you know, 6 steps right, 2 steps left, you know, I found that fascinating.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, you know, I guess it would just be conjecture, but I'd imagine that sort of focusing on the mechanics of it and the like this many steps, that many steps could be distancing from the emotion of it, about how he felt in that moment, as opposed to what he was doing and what he was seeing. Because I think, I remember when I was filming that interview, I was so struck by the fact that he had the thought in that moment to tell everybody that he was with that, don't touch anything. If you're gonna faint, just fall. Don't try and reach out and stop yourself. Because if your fingerprints get anywhere, then you're gonna get accused of the murder. And it's like, to be able to think of that in that moment, I think it is just probably from a lifetime of sort of having police look at you as a potential danger, as opposed to somebody to protect. But yeah, I found that pretty incredible.
Yeah, I'm curious, as a filmmaker, you talked a little bit about this, about the watching from behind, the camera. You capture a lot of, deeply emotional moments here for, Rodney interacting with family, Rodney recounting these stories or something like that. How do you be present for those, take those in, and still keep doing your job as professionally as you do?
I guess for me, it's about, and in this case, I filmed Rodney for 6 years, not full time or anything, but over the course of 6 years, and we really, really got to know each other. And so I think that you just develop a level of understanding and trust. And, I could feel comfortable that, like, if Rodney's saying something, I'm not going to be responding in that moment as if we're just having a conversation and we're friends. I'm doing my job and capturing and filming, what I need to do. And that, it's, for every conversation that's on camera, I feel like there are many hours that we spent together off camera. So it's not, I think you just have to feel like trust in your relationship with the person. But yeah, I mean, I know I made a series of short films a few years ago with kids who were in foster care in Ghana, and I only had 2 weeks to get to know them, film with each one of them, and it was really, really hard. And I think it's about time. You just can't do it the same way if you're on a schedule with somebody and they can feel the pressure, So I think it's about getting to know people and not being in a hurry to stick a camera in somebody's face either.
So you're just going to give yourself 6 years for any project you work on.
Oh, well, let's hope not.
I'm sure people would love to hear an update where Rodney is and how the sanctuary is coming along.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, because of COVID, I think the nonprofit that Rodney had been working with, the Earth Conservation Corps, he's no longer employed by them, unfortunately, as of January. So the land and that, out at Oak Hill, that's their land. So he just, he's still spending some time there because, he built all those aviaries and put a lot into it. But he actually bought a house a couple years ago out a few hours outside of DC in Charlotte Courthouse, Virginia. And it's 7 acres. And so his hope is to make a place there to sort of redo the work that he had done there, and make it really a place where people can come and they could camp, they could, stay longer than a half-hour experience with the birds, and just spend time with nature, really. And he won't be at the whim of anybody else because it'll be his property. So that's his hope and what he's working towards now.
I presume you know of a way, and that there is a way for people to support his latest venture if they care to. Can you plug away?
Yes, yes, that's wonderful. Rodney's website is rodneysraptors.webs.com. And front and center on his homepage, there's a donate button, which goes through PayPal. So if anybody is willing to support his work, he, I'm sure, would be so appreciative.
I'm sure many will want to. So thank you for that information. You know, clearly Rodney has his vision and his ambition and the things that he is doing and wants to continue to do. I'm curious, clearly you are a filmmaker, not just by training and education, but at your core. Do you have a vision for your future work?
Well, I had been before, sort of pre-pandemic, I'd been planning my next documentary, sort of in pre-production. For a while, I had a friend who worked at the Department of Sanitation in New York, and there was a female commissioner of sanitation for a long time. She's now running for mayor, but I'd been really interested in the idea of a film about female sanitation workers. But with the pandemic, I just, I'm waiting to get vaccinated. I'm not ready to sort of be close in there with anybody yet. So I've been working on 2 different writing projects, actually, TV comedy pilots. So sort of very different from falconry in stressed communities, but it's been fun. It's been sort of it's nice to do something light, which is great.
Oh, change of pace. I like that. You have a website too. It doesn't have a donate button on the front page, but maybe it should.
Yes, the falconerfilm.com, if anybody wants to check that out. We are going to have, there's a watch page. Obviously, people watching this have already seen, but if anybody wants to tell their friends and family about more opportunities to watch the film in the future, that would be fantastic.
Well, thank you so much, Annie, for sharing your tremendous film with us. It was not just a joy in terms of a movie viewing experience, but really a treasure to get to meet and feel like we've met Rodney Stotts and the incredible work he's doing. So thank you. The Falconer is out there. You can find it on the website. You can tell your friends, and you can support Rodney if you wish to, which would certainly be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for your efforts. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you, Warren. I'm very glad to be here with you.
Thank you.